Hey everyone, you're listening to the Fantasy Football Uptick. I'm Jeremiah Blue, and today we're going to be talking about players that you might want to stash. With the news that Andy Dalton just got signed by the Dallas Cowboys, I wanted to take a second and think, okay, let's compare some of the backup quarterbacks, not the ones that are in like some sort of QB competition, like obviously Trubisky and Tyrod Taylor. They actually have a shot to start this year, but guys that the value is so low because there's no way they're going to start, like Andy Dalton, who again just got signed by the Cowboys, and Jamies Winston, who is the backup quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. These are two quarterbacks that they've been starters for the last couple of years, and people have their own opinions on them. Now that they're backups, which one would be like a Teddy Bridgewater-like person where after a year being the backup, they actually get an opportunity to be a starter again? So with that being said, we'll jump right into it. This is only really going to pertain to people in 2 quarterback dynasty leagues or Super Flex Dynasty leagues where you can start up to 2 quarterbacks. So if we go through the numbers, I think most people the consensus would probably be that Jameis is the guy you want to stash in this scenario. I disagree with that, and I'll get into why here in a second. So Jameis, if you look at the numbers, like last year, he threw for over 5,000 yards, 5,109 yards last season. There's only 4 other quarterbacks who've ever done that. The names being, just hear these names: Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and Ben Roethlisberger. So outside of those 4 quarterbacks in the history of the NFL, the only person who's ever thrown for 5,109 yards or more is Jamies Winston. So obviously the upside with Jamies Winston is there. So if you're going to stash again for a 1 quarterback league and you're in one of those 20 to 40 player rosters that there's really just nobody on free agency and the drafts are only rookie drafts, that's the kind of league you might want to try and trade something cheap for Jamies Winston right now, because he can be a number 1 quarterback for you. And he's playing behind Drew Brees, who is getting older. The only real window I see to Jameis starting is if he gets the job with the Saints. So the big difference between Jameis and Andy Dalton is, if you look at it from a broad spectrum and not talk about the talent, not talk about what they're good at, what they're not good at, but Jameis was a free agent when the free agency started this year, and he didn't get picked up by anybody. He had to go and be a backup in New Orleans. If Andy Dalton would have been a free agent when free agency started, I believe Andy Dalton would have got picked up by someone. Andy Dalton's a good quarterback. The Bengals released Andy Dalton after the NFL draft. So free agency already went through. People had already made plans through the draft to get their backup quarterbacks. So obviously he got picked up by the Dallas Cowboys really quickly, but Andy Dalton clearly wanted to be a backup and then next year get an opportunity to go find the situation that he likes. And I do believe that somebody's going to give Andy Dalton that situation, similar to what happened to Phillip Rivers this offseason, where he went and got a job with the Indianapolis Colts. If we look at Andy Dalton's career, the first 5 years Andy Dalton was in the NFL, he took his teams to the playoffs. The Bengals were a good team back then, so it's not crazy that he was able to take his team to the playoffs, but he was good enough to take his team to the playoffs. Remember, Andy Dalton was a winning quarterback in the NFL. In 2015, when he was having his best season, he got hurt. He had a 10-2 record, and he was in the conversation for MVP that season. If it wasn't for him getting hurt, I assume he would have been able to win in the playoffs. Granted, again, he plays really bad in the 4 playoff games that he's actually been in. Again, those were his first 4 years in the NFL, so he was only a 4-year guy, which he was just turning the corner in 2015, which was his 5th year, and then he got injured, didn't get to play in the playoffs. After that, 2016 was kind of like a bad start, and then AJ Green gets hurt. They have a tie game, and the next 5 losses with the rest of the season, they end up losing by a total of 16 points. So it's one of those, it's the NFL. You're not going to make the playoffs every single year. Even the Patriots missed the playoffs the year Tom Brady got hurt. But when people get hurt, teams kind of have a bad season, and the truth is they were close. They were this close. If you're a fan, if you're a GM of that team, if you're a Bengals fan at that point, we're like, okay, we made the playoffs the last 5 years. We were this close last year. We just missed a lot. We got a lot of tough breaks throughout the season, and we'll do it again next year. And then 2017. So this is the 2016 year was the bad year. 2017, they inexplicably trade their two best offensive linemen. That was the year that they traded away They released Kevin Zettler, who went to Cleveland, and then of course Andrew Whitworth, who ended up going to the Rams. That was the year that Sean McVay kind of took over the Rams and became the boy genius because they had one of the best left tackles in football. So Andy Dalton loses those two guys. The team was just, we knew the team was going to be terrible when we saw the offensive linemen go. So I don't know what the Bengals thought they were going to do, but they were this close in 2015. 2016, they had a bad year, but you could tell that they were close enough to, if a couple of things would have went the right way, a couple of people would have stayed healthy, they could have been a playoff team again. And then in 2017, they decided to trade away their best two offensive linemen. It was a disaster, naturally. And then 2015, Dalton and AJ Green get hurt. 2019, you saw what happened. It was Jonah Williams, their first pick, the left tackle that was going to be there. He's out for the year. AJ Green out for the year. John Ross misses half the year, and then Cody Glenn misses 11 games. Who's another tackle that they brought in 2018 to fix that offensive hole that they created in 2017. So again, this team has just been bad. Yet Andy Dalton's still going out there playing decent football. I think he's widely regarded as a good quarterback. Now, don't get me wrong, Andy Dalton has his flaws for sure. He doesn't have the big arm that Jamies Winston has. He's inaccurate at times, but he makes good decisions, and he's a smart player. He's a winning quarterback. There's going to be teams that are this close that with Andy Dalton could put them over the hump. Take a team like Chicago Bears that have a great defense, and they just need a guy that can kind of ride the ship. I think Andy Dalton's better than Nick Foles, but he's in that same caliber, right? Honestly, I think Andy Dalton's better than Phillip Rivers. And Phillip Rivers went to Indianapolis Colts, and I'm a Phillip Rivers guy. I'm just saying that Andy Dalton is a smart, winning level quarterback. So we'll see what happens with him. But I feel very confident that Andy Dalton's going to get another shot in the NFL. Whereas in the other end, Jameis Winston, he's had a career losing record. If you just look at the numbers, even though he's putting all these stats together, I don't think a year of him being behind Sean Payton and behind Drew Brees is going to give any other team any confidence to bring him in as the starter. What would have to happen is that Drew Brees goes down, Jameis Winston gets the start at that point, or the Saints, and now this would be a big jump for Jameis Winston, the Saints realize that Jameis Winston's actually good. They are able to fix some of those turnover issues. Sean Payton believes in him, and when Drew Brees retires, they give the reins over to Jameis. I do not see that happening. I think Jameis Winston was a cheap option. He wanted to come play in that location because, Sean Payton and Drew Brees are there, and he saw what happened to Teddy Bridgewater, like where he got to sit back, and then he got the big money from the Carolina Panthers. Like, I could see something like that happen, assuming there's an injury. Jameis gets to go out there and show how much he's improved. But other than that, he's going to be coming in for competitions. He's never going to come in and we're like, we really want you to be our guy. He might get another offer to be. I think Jameis Winston will stay in the league for a while as a backup quarterback, but he's going to be a backup quarterback because he's already shown that he has a tendency to turn the ball over like a ridiculous amount. Last year, he turned the ball over through 30 interceptions, and he fumbled the ball 12 times. He doesn't just do one or the other. He fumbles and he throws picks. If you look at his overall career, he's thrown 121 touchdowns, which is really, really good, right? But he's thrown 88 interceptions. He's rushed for 10 touchdowns, 50 fumbles, 50 fumbles? You fumbled the ball 50 times? Like, come on, man. And then and Andy Dalton on the other end, he doesn't put up the yards, he doesn't put up the touchdown numbers, but he does protect the football to an extent. He does have a history of throwing his own interceptions, but again, he's surrounded by really bad talent. I think that's a product of what's around him, a product of where he was at early in his career, but later in his career, he's gotten better. He just never had that talent. Like if late Andy Dalton was on those early Andy Dalton teams, I don't think the playoffs would have ended the same way. Andy Dalton's a little bit better than people give him credit for. Again, I don't think he's a perfect quarterback, but we're talking about fantasy value, right? So we're talking about like in those super flex leagues, essentially every quarterback is owned. Every single quarterback. In those 2 quarterback leagues, every single quarterback is owned. So every quarterback has value. And we're just talking about value. I'm not talking about Andy Dalton's going to go and win you a championship, although the other good thing about these guys is that one's on Dallas and one's in New Orleans. These are 2 really good offenses, right? I think the situation that Dalton's in, I think that's Breeze makes New Orleans go. Breeze is what makes New Orleans great. Dallas, on the other end, I think that's a great team that Dak is a product of. But Dak, I'm not saying that Dak is bad. Dak is better than Dalton. But if Dak goes down, I think Dalton's stats are going to look better than Jameis Winston, even though historically Jameis Winston's been a better fantasy player because he likes to air the ball out. Now, what I will say is I think they're both in great situations. I wouldn't say that Drew Brees is necessarily going to be more injury prone than Dak, although historically he has been. I'm a Cowboys fan, so I got to knock on wood. But because Dak's never been hurt, you know. But Drew Brees is rarely ever hurt either, and he doesn't sit back in the pocket and take a lot of shots. Dak, on the other end, will run and take shots. So, I mean, I don't think either one of them are getting hurt. I wouldn't bank on that. But these are 2 backups that are in situations that if the starter goes down, they immediately vault up to being top 10 quarterbacks, right? So, I like Dalton if we're talking about super flex stashing, because I think next year I would say I'll put it at 80% chance that Dalton gets an opportunity to start for another team in 2021, whereas I think Jameis, on the other end, that the percentage is so low that I really think the only option is that Drew Brees retires, which I don't feel confident that Drew Brees is going to retire next year, and then Jameis gets an opportunity at the New Orleans job, because if that's not the case, or Drew Brees gets hurt and he shows off that he's better or he has improved, outside of those 2 scenarios, I don't think Jameis gets an opportunity for next year's to start next year. So if it's me, I think consensus is going to say Jameis Winston is the guy you want in those kind of super flex dynasty leagues, where I'm telling you I would go Andy Dalton, because I think A, Andy Dalton's a better quarterback, but B, I feel way more confident that he's going to get another opportunity in the NFL as a starter than I do Jameis Winston. So that's it for today's show. Hope you liked it. If you did, hit a like, click subscribe. If you've got any questions about the show or disagree with me, go ahead and put them in the comments. Until next time, see ya!